with that, I'm really excited to present another colleague of mine who wrote a book recently that we are going to cover today. And she's going to tell us about our book and share some of her amazing insights with us. And so let me get us kicked off here. So DeAnnah Stinson Reese is a corporate equity strategist with 10 plus years of experience in equitable hiring, retention, DEI education, and career development. She helps companies to understand the power of biases, privilege, race, and social injustices to strategize ways to cultivate truly diverse and inclusive workplaces that retain top diverse talent. And beyond that, she works at PowerToFly, and I feel so honored to have met her, to have chatted with her, to get to know her, and also just to have her here today to talk about her book. And so, DeAnnah, I wanted to hand the mic over to you, see if there's anything else you want to add to that introduction.
No, you did such an amazing, first of all, you did an amazing job, right? And I don't know why you did not tell the audience how we initially met, like a year before I even started consulting with PowerToFly, and how important it is, right? Nicole to me is like a testament on just how important it is, A, to network, but B, to have, individuals that are championing for, the underdogs, those of us that, may not get seen easily, because sure enough, we met, we had a great conversation. Things didn't work out at that time for what we were going to do. And then here we go, like a year later, and this girl messages me an email. And she's like, yeah, Nicole recommended you. She just like sung such high praises about you. We would like for you to, be a global DEI consultant with PowerToFly. I was like, what? And so it's been nothing but an amazing experience ever since. I've absolutely loved being with you all at PowerToFly, helping the different clients I've been able to impact thus far through the consulting work we've been doing. And it honestly is just a testament to how important it is to have so many different people championing and doing the work as it pertains to DEI. So thank you all for, thinking so highly of me to have me on here today.
Okay, DeAnnah, like, tear up. You can't tell because I got the glasses on, but when I met you, you like totally left me starstruck. I remember after we talked, I was like, Sienna, we need to get her on the team. She is incredible. And so obviously very grateful to have you here. And like beyond anything that I did, said, whatever, obviously it's a testament to you and the work that you've done and the impact that you have and the passion that you bring to the things that you talk about and the work that you do. So I know a lot of times when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, we talk about allies, and like that's great, right? But like we need to also talk about the women that are pushing this process forward. And so I would love for you to tell us about your book, Thriving in Black, the Playbook. Tell us about it, inspiration, what you cover in there, and all of that good stuff. And we're going to drop a link to your website in the chat for everyone to check it out.
Awesome. This is great. So Thriving in Black. So here's like the backstory with it, right? Came up with the concept a little over a year ago. And this is for those of you that may be thinking about writing a book, right? The hardest part is actually writing it, okay? Because once it's written, like it's smooth sailing in terms of like the publication process in comparison to like the writing process. And I'm like a natural writer. So the fact that it took me so long to get it written is just another conversation for another day. Anywho, came up with the concept about a year ago though, because when I first started the business 3 years ago, I had started it I started with the intention of I want to help underrepresented groups, specifically my community, the Black community, in how do we show up in a way during our searches and during our career progression that allows us to move into higher paying roles within our industries. And what I learned very early on that I knew but was not I knew but didn't feel, right? So, and let me explain what that means. So I knew that we had these systemic barriers and these different challenges and things like that that exist that makes it challenging for Black professionals to advance in various spaces. However, because at the point of my career before I started my entrepreneurial journey, at a point of my career very early on, I was used to always having a job, right? And having the opportunity and being that person that's like doing the hiring or advocating for someone, right? So I knew those challenges existed, but I didn't necessarily experience it and feel it until I resigned from a role for the first time to move and relocate to Houston. And when that happened, it was like, oh, it's real, real. Like I knew it was real, but because I was like championing for it and advocating and pulling people into opportunities, you know, using my power and that privilege at that time, being in certain roles in certain companies and entities, helping to bring the Black community into spaces, I really didn't feel the effects of systemic racism in trying to advance within your career. I didn't necessarily feel it again until I resigned and had to do my own search. And that is when I realized, oh my God, like, I'm not even applying the concepts that I'm telling folks to do when I was in previous interviewing and things like that. I was not even not myself following those same guidelines, recommendations, strategies. I wasn't following. And I was like, why am I not doing this? Right. And it's a thing that happens, I believe, when you go into this fight or flight mode, when you are unemployed and you're trying to find a job, or when you become fed up at a company for whatever the reason may be, and you go into this mode of, I need to find a job and I need to find something now, you kind of almost throw out the window some of the logic or some of the strategy that will actually help you get from point A to point B, because there's a certain level of desperation, I think, that kicks in, and it causes you to sometimes take actions that are not the most productive for your search. And so when I realized that about myself, that's when I took a step back and was like, okay, time out. Let me actually approach this in a more strategic way. And sure enough, when I did that, landed a role like within 30 days, like literally. And at that point, that role was dealing with career development. And so it was actually at the time, I was like, all right, I wanted it, but I wanted it like for like right then and there. It wasn't like the end goal. But long and behold, it ended up being a blessing in disguise, because it's what pushed me to start my business on coaching professionals, right? Actually being in a role where that was all that I had to do. I didn't have to hire. I wasn't doing the professional development. I wasn't doing DEI programming like I was in other roles. It was like solely coaching to get folks into like these other positions. And so it was like, okay, there is a huge lack of understanding in the Black community and really the BIPOC community as a whole. But I was targeting the Black community. And I was like, there is like, we don't even show up as our best selves, like on our resumes, via LinkedIn. We're not applying strategies to our search. We are using very outdated methods for searching for jobs and growing in our careers. And literally, it's this premise around, oh, I should be able to apply and somebody's going to call me, see how great I am on this resume, and I'm going to get the job. And that's not how it works. Nowhere near how it works anymore. And so at that point, basically, I started coaching professionals. And true story here, it took me 2 years before I attached the concept that I help Black professionals to my brand. It took 2 years for me to get there, because initially I thought, if I do that, people are going to look at me funny or not want to work with me or not want to, trust me as a professional, had all these different misconceptions. And so I started the business initially just saying, oh, I help professionals, get hired, blah, 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 etc. And the moment I actually was like, look, this is who my target audience is. I'm helping the BIPOC community to get hired, to increase their salaries, etc. Do you know the floodgates like opened in a good way, where it was like I was getting the type of clientele that I wanted to work with. I was seeing way higher results from my clients because my methods are curated to the problems that we face as a community when it comes to career advancement. And so about a year ago, when I decided that I was like, I'm going to take this formula that I created. First, it was like, let me create the formula, let me copyright the formula. And then it was like, okay, how do you get the formula out to people where they don't have to necessarily do one-on-one coaching with you? You know, they can still get these insights. So it was like, create a book. So Thriving in Black, the Playbook, it is literally a practical guide that helps Black professionals, Black and brown professionals, to understand how to strategically navigate predominantly white spaces in order to advance in their careers. So what we do is, it's a pretty short book. I can see it in my reflection, actually. So y'all can see it is relatively short. Ignore that. That's a bookmark that people were getting. But it is, let me see if you can see, it is about 40, it is exactly 44 pages long, and it has notes section for you to actually jot down notes. And it's literally, when I first wrote it, it was longer. And what I did was I was very intentional to make sure I went in and cut out all the stuff that don't matter, right? Like, because it's like when you're writing, you're like, so let me tell you about this time, this story where I did this. And it was like, they don't care. If it has nothing to do with how to apply these concepts, they probably don't care. And even if they do care, they don't need to care. They need to care about, how do I put this into action, right? So I didn't want unnecessary fluff as a distraction to my readers, because then it could deter you from getting to the end of the book. So the book is intentionally trimmed down from all the unnecessary fat, where you're getting the lean meat, okay, or the veggies. If you're a vegetarian, you're getting all the good veggies, right, that you need in order to get full. And it's with tangible action steps for you to apply same day. Like, that was my goal, right? When people read this, I want them to be able to say, okay, let me grab my resume, or let me go pull up my LinkedIn profile, or let me think about this scenario at my job and apply these concepts right then and there. I break down my MVP formula that we use in our coaching and like rebranding services, where it's literally showing you, how do I apply the most valuable proposition formula? That's what MVP stands for E3. It's the most valuable proposition formula. And you can apply it to any task. You can apply it to your professional brand. And you literally transform how you are perceived, or how your work is perceived, and how you are an asset. And so that's really what the book is about. It's thinking about, how do you show up as your best self, and how do you navigate conversations? How do you navigate situations where your company may view you as too essential for the role you're in to promote you? Because we've all seen where you may be a good candidate for a promotional opportunity. However, for some reason, your company brought in somebody else to fill their role, even though they knew you wanted it. You were highly qualified, probably overqualified, but yet still, they chose to overlook you and bring in somebody else. Part of that may have been racial discrimination. Part of that may have been bias. But another part of that, oftentimes, what a lot of Black professionals don't understand and know, is sometimes it is, you've made yourself too essential for that role. Right. And that can be white, Black, Hispanic, it don't matter. When you make yourself too essential for a role, that means from a business perspective, it makes more sense financially to keep you where you're at versus bringing in somebody else, because taking you out of that role, for some reason, the narrative has been created that by taking you out of that role and having to find somebody else for it, it's more detrimental to the company than just bringing in somebody new to fill the other, that new promotional role that's become available. And so it's all about risk analysis. And so I talk about, how do you navigate those type of situations so that you're still a rock star, you're still an asset, the most valuable professional as it pertains to the work that you do, but you're not too essential to be moved up into a promotional opportunity. And then I talk about salary negotiations, networking intentionally, and then I give a little snippet of what to expect in the Thriving in Black, the next part of the series. And so this particular book is very much so catered to your professionals. But I am working on another book, same same title, Thriving in Black, but it's going to be for companies on how do you best support your Black and brown employees so that you retain them and you attract top diverse talent.
Okay, I love that.
I know. That was a lot.
Like, no. Yeah, you said a lot, but you said a lot of really important and interesting information. And I want to go back to the part where you talk about navigating the white space as a Black or brown professional, right? And growing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what DeAnnah and Sienna talked about was authenticity, code switching, all of that. And I'm like, I'm having these like existential crises about what professionalism means and authenticity means, right? And I'm in a very privileged place. Like, I'm a white woman, clearly, very white at that. But like, for me, professionalism, it's insane because it's really like rooted in white patriarchy, right? Because like, what does professionalism mean? What does that, and how does that tie into authenticity, and how does this also tie into code switching? And so I would love for you to kind of dive into that a little bit and talk about as well, when you made this switch from talking to all career or professionals who are trying to navigate their career to just focusing on Black professionals, what kind of conversations have come up? What does that look like for you?
So I've had, ironically, I have not seen any, I'll say challenging conversations from like my corporate partners, so like different companies that I come in and consult with or anything of that sort, where I've seen, I guess you could say backlash, and I'll put that in air quotes, is from professionals that are not Black or that are not brown that have reached out for service. And I let them know, hey, this is my target audience. While we do have services that you are more than welcome to take advantage of, my services and my target audience is very much so curated to these professionals as I target problems specifically within these communities. And I've been told that's racist, that's this, that's that. And I was like, okay, be that as it may, you can feel that way. Like, I'm not here to change your mind about whether or not you think it's racist. I'm just going to tell you to go look up the word racism and understand that you have to be in a place of privilege, or come from a privileged group in order to elude or exert racism towards a underrepresented group. But, hey, have at it, right? That's what you think. That's what you think. But I have had some folks that have reached out, and all of this is usually via LinkedIn, to be 100% honest, because I have a very strong presence on LinkedIn. I've had people reach out to ask, why is it that you target the BIPOC community? Why do you not allow for your services to be available for everyone? And so what those conversations have looked like has been basically, I have no problem with helping any person that is genuine and is in need of the help. However, I prioritize and target my community because that's where my priority is. My priority is my community. And so I typically break down and explain how white professionals, as you know, Nicole, they have a head start in everything and in every aspect. Whereas the Black community, we don't have a head start, right? We're starting multiple steps behind. And so because of that, my priority is making sure I get us to a point where we're starting a little bit closer in the game, right? We're not so far behind in where we're starting, because no matter what, no matter all the work that I do, I feel like we're still going to be behind, right? Because we're so far behind. And as we move up, white professionals it's not like they're not moving up, y'all aren't moving up, they're moving up. And so it's like we're always behind. But if I can do something to help to close that gap some, that gives us a better chance at getting to where we want to be in our careers, being in spaces where we can continue to bring more diversity into roles that typically are not very diverse. I know I have a colleague that's a chief diversity officer at an investment banking firm. It's based out in Europe. And he was like, it's so hard to find somebody that looks like me. He's a Black male. He said, I have to go it's like, let's say a company of 1,000 employees. He's like, it's less than 5% of us. Like, you know how long it takes to walk and find somebody that looks like me? And then he's like, there's nobody like me in the C-suite. Like, nobody. Like, I'm one of one. Like, in the C-suite, as it pertains to just another person of color. Forget Black, forget just of any melanated color or any other descent other than, white European or white American. He's the only one. And so when you think about situations like that, having only one, that's not enough, right? We know that that's tokenism, and it's just not enough. And so those are the reasons why Thriving in Black, the playbook, exists, right? It's to educate individuals that need to be in spaces and that need to know how to show up, educate them on how to do it. And it's not a novel. It's not, I didn't design it to be a novel. It's a playbook. So it's like getting straight to the point. This is what you do. This is why. This is how you do it, right? And do it. So that is literally the premise of the book. And those are the type of conversations that I've had to have. And when you mentioned code switching, it's so interesting. I can't remember who I had this conversation with, because I've had quite a few conversations around this recently. But I tell people, a lot of people view code switching as a negative thing. And the premise behind how it started, yes, it does come from a negative place, from the sense of it's because of trying to conform to what is rooted in, white values and what white individuals have perceived as being professional, etc. However, I've always told clients of mine, if you intentionally choose to code switch in order to tend to a specific type of audience in order to get you to point B, I don't see anything wrong with that. Because at the end of the day, that's what target marketing is to a degree, right? And so when you do it, I feel like in a way that is like you feel uncomfortable, you don't want to do it, you feel like you can't be your authentic self, that's one thing, versus you consciously choosing to say, hey, this is the audience that I'm talking to. I'm going to show up as this particular version of myself because I know this is going to allow my audience to resonate quicker to what I need them to resonate to, but I'm still being my authentic self. So we don't show, what people don't realize is you don't show the world every part of you in your interactions, right? There's part of me you've never seen. There's part of me Sienna has never seen. There's part of me my audience on LinkedIn has never seen. And so it just all depends on who I'm trying to reach at that moment, what part of me I'm going to show. So I'm never going to show up as someone other than who I am. However, everybody's not going to always get every facet of who DeAnnah is in every moment. And so depending on where we're at in a conversation or who it is that I'm talking to, you may get to see the side of me that likes to drink a little bit of wine from time to time, right? Like depending on if I know that you're a wine enthusiast, I may be like, oh yeah, let me tell you about my experiences, right? Versus, you know what I'm saying, someone else that may, resonate more with my athletic side, right? I may talk about my athletic side, or someone that's more into the artistics, right? If I'm talking to somebody that's more on the artistic side. So when it comes down to code switching, I do want to add to that piece as well that when you do it intentionally and you're still showing up as your authentic self, but it's just a specific version of your authentic self, that is okay, right? It's if you're being intentional about doing it. But if you feel like in the moment you're doing it because you feel uncomfortable or you're not even really being your authentic self, that's not really who you are, you don't feel comfortable in the behaviors that you are exhibiting, then it is problematic. But it can be a good thing is all I'm trying to point out to my black Americans that are out here watching, or just individuals that are in the BIPOC community as a whole that may feel like, well, I do code switch, but I do it on purpose because, X, Y, and Z. Nah, sis, go ahead. Keep going. You good?
DeAnnah, I love that you make this point because I think it's so important to mark that point about being intentional, right? And the point you brought up about your colleague who is a chief diversity officer at an investment banking firm, and he is the only person of color in the C-suite. Like, for me, from the outside, it is so frustrating to continuously see people of color placed, especially Black individuals, into diversity roles, because it's like, okay, people are capable of doing things outside of diversity, right? Even if they come from this underrepresented or underserved group, like they don't need to take on this additional burden. And so, you know, I would love to kind of finish off here as we have a few minutes left. Tell us where we can keep up with you. Obviously, we've got the book in the background. We're going to drop the link in the chat, but I would love for you to also just send us out with a piece of advice that you would have for any Black woman or any woman of color who's tuning in today, or other audience members, of course, but you know, this is about elevating Black women. So I would love for you to leave us with a piece of advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my piece of advice would be to stop undermining and undervaluing the work that you do. A lot of times we view the things that we do as mundane because it's repetitive or so easy, or just because it's something that comes natural to us. Understand and always remember that if your role exists, it exists for a reason. It adds value to the bottom line somehow, some way. When you keep that at the forefront, you start to think about the work that you do in a different light. And I'll break this down in the book, but I want to leave my fellow female professionals that are in underrepresented groups with that nugget of information just to kind of dwell on and think on, because we have a tendency, especially as Black women, to be humble or have to be humble, right? And I am not a fan of a humble brag. Like, no, if I'm bragging, I'm bragging. If I'm going to be humble in that moment, I'm going to be humble in that moment. But let me tell you what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to downplay what I do for the sake of somebody being uncomfortable with how high I achieve or how high of a performer I am. And so understand and remember that if your role exists, even if you're not in it, it's going to still exist. So it's important to a company. So you just got to figure out, how does it directly or indirectly impact the bottom line? And if you guys want to follow me, y'all can follow me on LinkedIn. I haven't been very active like this year, actually, because since consulting with PowerToFly this year, I've been on this huge DEI merger project that has taken up quite a bit of my time. So I haven't been as active on LinkedIn, but I am typically very active on LinkedIn. So that's a very good place to follow me. And Instagram, I have very active Instagram and Twitter accounts. We do have a Facebook account, but I'm not that active on Facebook. I'm not going to lie to you guys. So find me on LinkedIn. It's just my name. And then from there, you'll be able to see the E3 page, to follow the E3 page. On Instagram, Twitter, and all the other social media platforms, it's simply E3 Pro, and then S as in Sam, V, C as in cat, S. So it's services basically shortened. So E3 Pro Services is the @ handle for all the other social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that.
Well, thank you so much, DeAnnah. I am obviously super happy that I got to interview you and talk to you today, learn a little bit more about you in this space, and, you know, learn a lot more about your book. And so we're going to drop that in the chat again to make sure that everyone can get a copy of this playbook. I love that, you know, you kept it short and took out a lot of what was not necessary, you know.
Yes.
In this day and age where we are so fast paced, we have to keep it short, sweet, and to the point, right? So thank you so much.